In this video, we're going to take up part one of two parts about human threat agents. So we'll discuss hackers, crackers, script kiddies, and spies in part one, and then in part two we'll take up insiders, cyber criminals, brokers, cyber terrorists, and state agents. So let's begin with hackers and crackers. Now, these terms, the first thing to understand is that these are obsolete terms. That is to say, security professionals do not typically use the term hacker or cracker, and there are a number of reasons for that. For one thing, the definitions keep changing over the years. For another thing, everybody has different definitions of them. And third, they have been used so much in popular context by people and media that they've become watered down and not very useful anymore in the professional field. However, having said that, let's take up what the definitions have historically been for these, and in particular we're going to look at the IETF RFC, I believe it's 1392 if I'm not mistaken. So let's take a look at the term hacker. According to the RFC 1392, a hacker is a person who delights in having an intimate understanding of the internal workings of a system, computers, and computer networks in particular. So I want you to notice a couple of things about this. First of all, that this is a high level of sophistication. That is to say, we're talking about intimate understanding of the internal workings. These are usually programmers or people who have a high level of sophistication about the inner workings of systems. The other thing I want you to note here is that there's nothing about maliciousness here. Quite often, the term hacker in popular usage refers to somebody who's malicious. But historically, this term is a non-malicious person. And sometimes they did malicious things, sometimes they didn't, but by definition anyway, a hacker is not necessarily malicious. Now, let's take a look at the term cracker using this same reference. An individual who attempts to access computer systems without authorization. These individuals are often malicious as opposed to hackers and have many means at their disposal for breaking into a system. So a couple of things here. Notice this: without authorization and often malicious. But I also want you to look at this, these words here, many means. So many means, this could be a high or low level of sophistication. These people may understand the inner workings of systems, or they may not. And they are almost always malicious intent. However, notice I just said almost always malicious intent. It says, notice here it says often malicious. There are cases where a cracker may not be malicious. For example, something we call jailbreaking. That is to say, take a smartphone and break into it such that is to say to bypass the systems on it so that you can do things on that smartphone that normally you can't do. You probably void the warranty, but normally you can't do on that phone. Say, remove built-in software and things like that. It may be for very good purposes and non-malicious, but that would be a cracking kind of tool. Sometimes they would be non-malicious, but in general, malicious intent. Now, hacker became a very umbrella term in popular usage. And so what happened for a while was that in the security, the professional field of security, we began to use different terms for different types of hackers for both malicious and non-malicious use, because the general public thought of hackers as malicious, and yet there were people who thought of them as non-malicious. And so we really divided, for a while, hackers into three categories. So the later usage of a hacker. First of all, there was the white hat hacker. This is the person who does not break the law. They just simply want to understand things and make them more useful. So that would be a white hat hacker. A black hat hacker really should be called a cracker. This is the person who is malicious. They have intimate knowledge typically of systems, or they may not, but like I said, this is popular usage. We would think of a hacker as the bad guy who is cracking systems, so we would just call them a black hat hacker. And then we have the gray hat hacker, and this is an unusual kind of person. These people often would break the law, but they had good intentions. Now, how in the world do you break the law and have good intentions? Well, for example, they want to be helpful to companies. So they would break into a corporate network and then send information to the company about how they did it so that the company could patch the vulnerability. So they're ultimately trying to do something good, but they may be doing something shady in order to do it because it's illegal to break into the system to start with. What's their motivation for doing this? Well, sometimes just to be nice, and other times it might be for a bounty. They might get paid by companies for finding the flaw in the system. Some companies didn't take to it very well, by the way, and would actually go after them and convict them for breaking into the system to start with, but all sorts of different scenarios might occur. But that would be the gray hat hacker. All right, script kiddies is our next category, and really a script kiddie is just a cracker, but it's a cracker with a low level of sophistication. Typically what the script kiddie would do would be to take a piece of software, let's say from Kali Linux, for example, that already exists, and they just learn how to use it. They don't have any real understanding of the system, so let's say that they want to break into somebody's Wi-Fi network. Well, they can just use a tool that's out there already, break into the Wi-Fi network, and never understand how Wi-Fi authentication works to start with. There are many script kiddies out on the internet. As a matter of fact, more hackers, or I should say more crackers, are script kiddies than the sophisticated level ones. This is still a useful term, by the way. We still use the term script kiddies quite a bit in professional circles in cybersecurity. Next are spies, and this is, I only have one point here. Spies are very simple. These are crackers for hire, and you can easily go out online and type, say in Google, crackers for hire, sometimes hackers for hire, and find people who will break into systems for you. You want somebody to break into the Canvas system at your school and change your grades, you pay them a fee and they'll do that for you. So these are usually black hat hackers or crackers that perform for a fee. Now, it's interesting that a lot of the people who do this job their credentials are quite often things like certified ethical hacker, which is a certification of people who have learned how to use tools and have sworn to be ethical, and yet they're out here selling their services for unethical purposes. Okay, in the next video then, we're going to take up insiders, cyber criminals, cyber terrorists, and state agents.